Good morning, everyone. So the second grade has a writing assignment today, so we're going to go back to Pinocchio. I hope everybody's comfortable. I hope everybody has their beverage. And let's get started. We're going to pick up at chapter 6. Pinocchio falls asleep with his feet on the brazier, and when he wakes up in the morning, finds them burnt off. It was a windy, cold night. The thunder was fierce, and the lightning as violent as though the sky was on fire. A bitter wind whistled angrily, raising clouds of dust and making the trees tremble and groan. Pinocchio was frightened of thunder, but he was still more hungry than frightened. So he opened the door and ran as fast as he could to the village, which he soon reached, panting, with his tongue hanging out like a hunter's dog. But all was quiet and dark. The shops were closed, the doors and windows shut, and there was not even a dog in the street. It seemed a village of the dead. However, Pinocchio, driven by hunger and despair, gave a very long peal at the doorbell of one of the houses, saying to himself, "This will bring somebody out." And indeed, a little old man with a nightcap on his head came to the window and shouted angrily, "What do you want at this hour?" "Will you be so kind as to give me some bread?" "Wait, I'll be back at once," said the old man, believing that he had to do with one of those street urchins who amuse themselves at night by ringing doorbells and rousing good people who are sleeping peacefully. In half a minute the window was opened, and the same voice called Pinocchio, "Stand under the window and hold out your hand." Pinocchio held out his hands, and a great kettle full of water poured down on him, drenching him from head to foot, as if he had been a pot of dried geraniums. He went home as wet as a rag, and exhausted with fatigue and hunger. He had no strength to stand, so he sat down and put his wet, muddy feet on the brazier full of burning coal. Then he fell asleep, and while he was asleep, his feet, which were wooden, caught fire and slowly burned away to cinders. Pinocchio slept and snored as though his feet belonged to someone else. At last, at daybreak, he was awakened by someone rapping on the door. "Who is it?" he called, yawning and rubbing his eyes. "It is I," answered a voice. It was the voice of Geppetto. Chapter 7. Geppetto comes home and gives Pinocchio the breakfast that the poor man had bought for himself. Poor Pinocchio's eyes were still half closed, and he had not noticed that his feet were burned off. Thus, when he heard his father's voice, he tumbled down from his stool to run and open the door. But after staggering a couple of times, he fell his full length on the floor, making a noise as of a whole bag of wooden ladles falling from the 5th story. "Open the door," cried Geppetto from the street. "I can't, Daddy," answered the marionette, crying and rolling over and over on the floor. "Why not?" "Because somebody has eaten my feet." "And who has eaten them?" "The cat," said Pinocchio, seeing the cat, who was just then playing with some shavings with his forepaws. "Open the door, I tell you," Geppetto cried again. "If you don't, I'll give you the cat o' nine tails when I get in." "Believe me, I can't stand up. Oh, poor me, poor me. I shall have to walk on my knees for the rest of my life." Geppetto, thinking that all this complaint was just another of Pinocchio's tricks, decided to end it for good. He climbed up the wall and got in at the window. At first he was angry and scolded him, but when he saw his own Pinocchio lying on the floor, and really without his feet, his anger vanished. He took him in his arms, kissed and caressed him, spoke many affectionate words, and with tears on his cheeks, he said, sobbing, "My dear little Pinocchio, how did you burn your feet?" I don't know, Daddy, but believe me, it has been a horrid night. I shall never forget it as long as I live. It thundered and lightened, and I was very hungry, and the talking cricket says, it serves you right, you had been wicked and you deserve it. And I said, be careful, cricket. And he said, you are a puppet, and you have a wooden head. And I threw the hammer at him, and he died. But it was his fault, for I didn't want to kill him. And the proof is that is that I put the pan on the brazier. But the chicken flew away and said, goodbye, I shall see you again. Give my love to the folks. And I got more and more hungry. And for that reason, the little old man with the nightcap opened the window and said, stand under the window and hold up your hat. And I got a kettle full of water on my head. It isn't a disgrace to ask for a bit of bread, is it? I ran back home as fast as I could, and because I was so hungry, I put my feet on the brazier to dry them. And then you came home, and I felt that my feet were burnt off, and I'm still so hungry, but I have no more feet. Boo hoo hoo. And poor Pinocchio began to cry and scream so loudly that he could have been heard 5 miles away. Geppetto had only understood one thing of all this jumble of words, that Pinocchio was dying of hunger. He took 3 pears out of his pocket and said, giving them to him, these 3 pears were for my breakfast, but I willingly give them to you. Eat them, and may they do you good. If you want me to eat them, kindly peel them for me. Peel them for you, cried Geppetto, astonished. I would never have thought, my lad, that you were so refined and fastidious. That's too bad. We should get used from childhood to eating everything and liking it, for no one ever knows what might happen in this curious world. That's all very well, retorted Pinocchio, but I'll never eat fruit that isn't peeled. I can't stand skins. So that patient, kind Geppetto took a knife and peeled the 3 pears, putting all the peelings on the corner of the table. When Pinocchio had eaten the first pear in 2 mouthfuls, he was about to throw away the core, but Geppetto stopped him. Don't throw it away. There might be some use for it. I can't imagine I shall ever eat the core, cried Pinocchio, turning on him in a rage. Who knows? This is a curious world, replied Geppetto calmly. So the 3 cores, instead of being thrown out of the window, were placed in the corner of the table together with the parings. When he had eaten, or rather devoured, the 3 pears, Pinocchio yawned, and then he began to whimper. I'm still hungry. But, my son, I have nothing more to give you. Nothing? Nothing at all? Only the peelings and cores you left. All right, said Pinocchio. If there's really nothing else, I might eat some peelings. And he began promptly. At first he made faces, but one after another he quickly ate all the peelings, and after them the cores. And when he had eaten everything, he clapped his stomach and said cheerfully, Now I feel better. You see, said Geppetto, I was right when I said you should not be so refined and fastidious about your food. My dear boy, we never know what might happen to us. This is a curious world. And that is the end of chapter 7. I hope you join me tomorrow. We'll pick up with Pinocchio on chapter 8. Have a great day, everybody.